Now I'm ready. One of the people that has as many sources of information as anybody that I think I know is our next presenter, Rayelen Allen. You will remember her by her former married name, most of you, as Rayelen Russbacher, who has somehow in her lifetime had the ability to be all over the world and meet an awful lot of people with pretty well-known names and know what has gone on behind the scene. She has other talents, of course, as well, and if she wants to, this afternoon she can speak about the title printed in the program, or if she thinks something else is more current or appropriate, she can speak about that. But the activated cellular memory process is the one that we had a few months ago. Of course, things may change and they may not. I'll just leave that up to her. She's got carte blanche to speak about whatever she will, whatever she wants to in the time available, because she can talk for days. She will be giving an extra full-day seminar on Tuesday, and you know most of you know about that. And I'll ask her to say a few words about that as well. But again, it's really great to have Rayelen Allen back with us, and I know you'll enjoy her too. Here she comes.
Nothing ever happens accidentally. There are no accidents. Dean had no idea that I may not choose to speak on the activated cellular memory method today, even though I sincerely believe that it is a method that is so extremely powerful that every one of you must have it today, because we've got this narrow window of time. But there are no accidents. I just wanted to, Robert, where are you? A lot of you weren't here for the early bird session, but I want to give an example of there are no accidents. This was one of many things that I chose to give away this morning. And for some reason, I can't get it out of the car. This is it. It is the Templar symbol of prosperity. It is one of those ancient symbols that literally goes directly into your brain. Robert, would you please come up here? I want to show you people an example of absolute, what shall we say, synchronicity. This is the man that won it. Isn't that incredible? Thank you, Robert.
You're welcome.
And so, beginning that way, the energy changed about 2 hours ago. Did anybody feel that? So we did feel it. Okay. I have been planning my lecture for 3 months, 4 months now. In fact, I outlined it so perfectly that I made a little brochure out of it. And so the lecture is in the brochure. And it's free over at my table. And as of this moment, I still don't have the slightest idea what I'm going to talk on right now. But what I do know is that there has been a shift in the energies. I know it is going to be positive, but I know that there's a lot of garbage that's going to go on first. Now, a couple of days ago, we had an astrologer that spoke. How many of you were here to hear the astrologer? How many of you heard that we've got a grand cross? I'm not an astrologer, so if I'm saying these terms wrong, please correct me. That we have a grand cross on August 18th. Interestingly enough, August 18th is the birthday of the grandmother that used to take me on out-of-body journeys. I thought I was dreaming until she'd come in a few months later and say things like, well, how did you like our trip to Lemuria? Actually, it was our trip to visit the Lemurians that live inside of Mount Shasta. I was approximately 11 or 12 years old when that happened. Somewhere in my early teen years, I was taken into the Akashic Records. I don't believe they're the same section that Edgar Cayce read from, because he read from the medical, and it seems that what I have access to is the historical. And so August 18th is the day that we are supposed to dump our garbage. On August 17th, I am giving a workshop for the first time in 10 years on the activated cellular memory method. And that is all about dumping your garbage. That is what the process is all about. It's about pulling up your garbage and dumping it without going through it. How many of you have ever been to a psychologist or a psychiatrist? A lot of people. I've been to. I was going to be one of them. I have a bachelor's in psychology. I was fortunate enough to have done my thesis in biofeedback, which got me into yogis and yoga and Hindu philosophy. And I discovered that there are people who can do biofeedback without having to be hooked up to machines. And so I said, I want to know this. I don't want to know about machines. And that was the beginning of my spiritual path in earnest. For quite a number of years, I single-handedly supported our metaphysical bookstore. I have a feeling that many of you here in this audience have gone through that also. And so being on a spiritual path, and all of you are, when you are on a spiritual path, it is a dedicated path. Many times you think you're going to be doing one thing and you actually end up doing something else. Have people ever experienced that? In 1983, I came down with spinal meningitis. At that time, I had already started seeing clients using this form of numerology that my grandmother taught me, the one that accesses the Akashic Records. And so I really thought I knew what I was supposed to be doing in life. I have the ability to help people remember what they came to Earth to do. That's my gift that I was given by the record keeper. So that's what I decided I'm going to do. Now, at the time, I'm married to a nuclear physicist. He is the man at the Naval Postgraduate School who designed the nuclear warfare program. He also designed the anti-submarine warfare program and the electronic warfare program. And so the people that I associate with at this particular time in my life are admirals, senators, congressmen, an occasional president, secretary of defense, the Grand Sea Lord of the Admiralty, people like that. And here I am walking a spiritual path, trying to keep it very, very quiet so that I won't embarrass my husband in front of his colleagues. And I'm seeing a few clients. I'm not charging for them because at that time I'm still programmed that to be spiritual you have to be poor. Most of us are, you know. That's how the grand masters of the ancient days kept the light workers from doing anything that could alter their plans. I hope you understand that. So anyway, in 1983, I'm really quite happy. I've got a really terrific life going for me. I am an editor at a publishing company. I'm seeing clients. I belong to Dori D'Angelo's Angel Healing Circle in Carmel, and life is absolutely wonderful. And then I came down with viral meningitis. I stayed in bed one day with a headache so badly that I thought my head was going to explode. Finally, after about 24 hours, my husband takes me to the emergency room. They do a spinal tap and discover that I have viral meningitis. And the doctor takes my husband outside where I'm not supposed to hear, and he says, "Take her home. She's either going to die or get well." Great bedside manner. It wasn't until maybe a month ago that I found out that viral meningitis is the one you usually don't die from. But I didn't know that at the time. Well, I went home, went to bed, And weeks went by, months went by, and I'm not getting any better. I am lying there, and all of my spiritual friends are coming over and doing healings on me during the day. And after they finish with the healings, they say things like, you don't want to get well. You want this illness. You have caused this illness. And I'm thinking to myself, did I really cause this illness? Am I really in bed, possibly getting ready to die? Did I do that to myself? Well, at the time, I rejected their healing advice almost completely. Now, in hindsight, I realize that, yes, I did do that to myself. And I did that to myself because I was so happy in the life that I had created for myself, because I'd always wanted to work for a publishing company. I'd always wanted to help people. I was doing the two things that I had always wanted to do, and I was happy. But God had other plans for me. And so about 3 months into the viral meningitis, I heard a voice, and the voice said, "It is time." And I thought to myself, did I just hear a voice? And then I heard the voice again, "It is time." And now I'm thinking, my husband left the television on, and I'm going to have to get up and turn that television off. And I'm getting angry, that he would have done something so foolish as to leave the television on. And so I'm just I can barely move. The pain is so bad. And I have to turn myself over, and suddenly I look into my closet. My closet doors are wide open, and my clothes are not there. There is a chemistry laboratory there. And the man, the teacher, is standing at the door, and he finally said again, "It is time." And suddenly, without pain, I got up out of my bed, walked through my closet doors into what I guess was another dimension. The man went to the front of the class. He was an Indian, dark hair, glasses, white shirt, narrow black tie, black pants. He was not the Indian that you would think that would be giving a lecture like this. He says, "Welcome. We are giving a lecture on the holographic nature of the universe. Do you understand that?" Well, I had just attended a seminar at the Naval Postgraduate School on holograms, and I felt that I understood almost everything there was to know about holograms, and so I said, "Yes." And also remember, I'm surrounded by physicists. Everybody I know is a physicist, from the Peenemünde rocket scientists to some of the, like Fritjof Capra, to some of the greatest minds in the world are all our guests at the Naval Postgraduate School, and since I was the dean's wife, I had to entertain many of them. And so when he asked me if I understood holograms, I said yes. And he said, "The universe is a hologram. Every atom in the universe is a hologram of the universe." And then he brought it down to the body. Every cell in your body contains the memory of everything that you have done in this life. The DNA contains the memory of everything your ancestors have done, going all the way back. And the atoms in your body contain the memory of everything, good or bad, that has ever happened to whatever it was that they were part of. And so I thought that was most interesting. And then he kind of digressed a moment, and this is the part of the activated cellular memory method that I have never told to anyone before. Because you can imagine, after I do recover, my husband takes me to lunch or dinner with all of our colleagues, all of his colleagues and our friends, and says, "My wife just became the universe." She just flew through the universe, had these wild experiences, and I had only told him the mildest part of it. And so as he tells our colleagues, or his colleagues, what has happened to me, the ridicule rises and rises and rises. And so within me, I decide, no way am I going to tell anyone the whole story. Well, here's the whole story. You're ready for it. We are ready for this. We are ready to understand this. The professor said that eons ago, there was a planet full of people who were insane. He used so many words, meaning crazy, insane, maladjusted. The worst possible type of insanity infected these people. They killed each other in the most brutal ways possible. They had rage, they had anger. Of course, I'm thinking to myself, gee, that sounds an awful lot like Earth, doesn't it? And he went on to say that there were wars going on all over this particular planet at the same time that the planet was attacked from without. And what happened is that planet exploded into atoms. There was nothing left of that planet but atoms. Now remember what he said. The atoms carry the memory, not only the memory, but the emotional charge of everything that they were part of in their past. So, all of those bodies of all of those insane people that were on that planet were blown out into the universe. The instructor said that it took them eons upon eons to clean the universe of the virus. That's the way they refer to it, as the virus. Well, guess where the virus is quarantined? Does anybody have any idea? For those of you in the back that didn't hear that answer, Washington, D.C. I tend to think that the people living in Washington, D.C. have more of the atoms of those crazy people in their bodies than the rest of us do. But the quarantined planet, of course, is Earth. But you've all heard the saying, when someone gives you lemons, make lemonade. And so Earth became a school. And Earth became a school that taught compassion. Now, can you imagine a more difficult setting in which to teach compassion? And if you can learn compassion here, there is nothing in the rest of the universe that compares, regardless of what all of the science fiction movies want us to believe. Well, anyway, eons ago, when it was decided that Earth was going to be turned into a school, the early settlers who came down to prepare the soil, to prepare the bodies, to put the proper minerals in the soil so that our bodies would have exactly what we needed, so that our brains would work properly. In other words, setting up the whole place so that we could survive, we could come in as young, innocent souls, we could go through this process, and we could mature. Well, when those settlers came here, they ate the food on the planet, they breathed the air, they drank the water. In other words, they were getting the atoms in their bodies. They were getting the infected atoms in their bodies, the virus. Now, what the instructor told me is that this virus, depending on its level, will affect the soul. And if the soul goes out into the universe with this virus, they are afraid that the virus will reinfect the universe, and it will throw off their plan, is what they said. So the settlers that came here, when they died, when they finished their project and when they died, and I'm not saying they all died at once, but one would die at one time when his project was finished, and the way that they went home, when the body died, they would wrap it in a similar way to a mummy. And the instructor said, and this is why the Egyptians mummify their people, because they're trying to copy what the early settlers did. He also said the body finally went up in a puff of smoke, and that is why the Indians burn their bodies, because they are trying to copy what the early settlers did. What the early settlers did, and while he was telling us all of this, oh, by the way, I should back up a bit. When I walked into that classroom, I could see approximately 20 people sitting in the front, or sitting in this lab at the, those islands that they have in chemistry laboratories on the stools. We all had on night clothes. We all looked like we had just walked out of bed. But there were, you know how some of the huge classrooms have chairs going all the way up like theater style? Well, there was one of these huge classrooms. And so even though I only saw 20 people, there could have been 100,000 people attending that lecture. I have no idea how many people were there at that lecture. When the early settlers were ready to leave the earth and go back to wherever they came from in their soul body, they wrapped themselves up. They were placed in a gold-lined granite sarcophagus. A low-frequency electricity was hooked up to the sarcophagus. Mineral-rich water from the mouth of the Nile was put in the sarcophagus. With the electricity going through the sarcophagus, it took approximately 3 days for all of the water to evaporate. And the moment all of the water evaporated, there was a flash of light, and the body and all of the minerals that were left turned into light and vanished. And David Hatcher Childress showed a picture of something that he referred to as possibly a laser gun. That particular laser gun, or at least something that looked very much like it, was also in this out-of-body experience or near-death experience that I had. Because the moment the body flashed and all of its atoms dispersed, those atoms went into that thing that David showed a picture of and were beamed directly out the shaft of the pyramid. This is what I saw. I have already run into one other person who was at that particular lecture, and he's known that he was at it, and he has been afraid to come forward with this information because he is a very credible chiropractor. And something like this would cause him to completely lose his credibility. But he did come up to me after a lecture that I gave on it a few months ago and admitted to me that he was there. And of course, I did recognize him, and not only was he there, he was one of the ones that was sitting relatively close to me. Okay, after the instructor told us why we had to get rid, he told us about this negativity, and he told us that we had to get rid of it or it would reinfect the universe. Then he takes us down to the fact that we hold on to the emotional charge of everything negative that has ever happened to us in our lives. And when we are having an emotional experience, such as if our parents are hitting us, our emotional body literally rises up huge. And when we begin to settle down, these memories actually get embedded in the physical tissues of our bodies. And he wanted to give us all an example. And so I have a feeling that what he did is he appeared simultaneously to each person who was in the class. But since he's only instructing me, I can only tell you what happened to me. He came to me and he put his hand on top of my head. Before this, I could not tolerate having anyone put their hand on top of my head. When the priest tried to bless me, or when our ministers tried to bless me, and especially when the Baptist minister tried to dunk me, there was no way I was going to let him dunk me. And I would fight to get anybody's hand off my head. If somebody patted me, I would literally hit them to keep them from touching me on the head. Well, the instructor comes up, he puts his hand on my head. Suddenly, I am 5 years old again, and I am inside our wood box with the spiders and the other bugs, and I'm was deathly afraid of spiders. And my brother has just slammed the lid of the wood box down on my head, causing a knot, and he is now sitting on the lid so that I can't get out. So I went hysterical. I began screaming and crying, and of course my grandmother came and rescued me. The instructor tells me, breathe. Breathe long. Breathe slow. Breathe deeply. breathe through this. And suddenly, guess what? In my mind, the experience was no longer a horrible experience in which my brother practically cracked my skull. It was just a game that brothers and sisters play. And then immediately, he says, now let's experience the DNA. And suddenly, I am in a forest, I am holding a baby, I am watching a man in his early 20s. He is splitting logs with a sledgehammer and a wedge. Suddenly, something hits me in the mouth, and blood trickles down. The man takes the baby, puts his arm around me, and says, Bess, we've got to get you back to the house. Well, Bess is my mother's name. And suddenly it dawned on me, that is how she got the scar on her lip. Many months later, when I had an opportunity to ask her, I said, how'd you get the scar on her lip? Well, we were out in the forest, up in the woods, and your dad was splitting logs, and a piece of the wedge flew off and hit me in the lip. Exactly what I had experienced. And I looked around the classroom, and I could see that the rest of the students, I could see the trauma on their faces, that they were going through something, and then I could see the relief. It's over. And then he said, and now I want to show you what it is like to go inside of an atom. And he told us to all place our finger right over our heart and press down hard with your fingernail. And he says, this is the center of your being. This is where the mother and the father meet and commune. And of course, that is where the Star of David symbol comes from. The father points down, the mother points up, and when they meet in the heart, they commune. And when you find someone with an open pink heart, it is because they are pulling up the red energy of the mother, and they are pulling down the white energy of the father. It is meeting in the heart chakra, and they appear to have a beautiful pink aura, or they appear to be emitting pink from the heart chakra, when in actuality, the heart chakra is green. But when you have someone that is perfectly in balance with mother and father, masculine and feminine, heaven and earth, you will have someone who is emitting a pink aura. And so, he said, this is the heart chakra. This is the center of your being. It is also the center of unconditional love. This is the only way we access the universe, is through this chakra. And so he said, place your fingernail there. Now put all of your thought into the flesh below your fingernail. And then he said, now pick an atom. And so I just imagined an atom. He said, now place your consciousness inside that atom. Suddenly, everything went black. I felt that I was moving at a tremendous speed. I felt that that single atom had turned into a black hole, that it was going at light speed, and then suddenly I broke free in this flash of gold. It almost looked like gold mist, and I was floating in the universe. And it was wonderful. It was so wonderful. I was like a bird or an airplane. I was flying through space. I was doing flips and rolls and dives and swooping down on planets, taking a look at them, coming back up off the planet, going to another planet. And I finally found this absolutely beautiful golden planet full of deer creatures, beautiful little deers about this size. And they were all in pairs. And I chose this one particular pair, and I went into the body of the female of the pair. And they're bounding over, something that looks like tall wheat grass. They're bounding over it, and I am carrying on a conversation with the male deer. And, I'm asking, well, what are you doing here? What are you learning on this particular planet? And he said, we're developing our minds. And I said, well, how are you doing that? He says, well, look at us. We don't have hands. We can't do anything. We can't invent. God has given us everything we need to sustain us. We've got all the food and all the water we need. We don't have to build houses. We don't have to build transportation. We have everything we need. So what do you think we are doing here? We are developing our minds. And as he said that, I realized that it was almost like, philosophy. They were developing philosophy. And so I listened to that. And I also was very cognizant of the feelings that the female deer had for the male deer, the amount of love, the amount of bonding that they had. And I guess the main thing that I got from that experience is animals are not dumb animals. Animals are definitely on Earth or whatever planet they are on, and they too are studying a lesson. They are an evolving soul, and just like we are. And who is to say that they are below us, and who is to say they may not be above us? And so I left that planet, swooped in on a few others. Some were these beautiful crystalline things. Some were covered with ice. Some were only in the amoeba process. But it was interesting because I did join the consciousness of the amoebas also, the one-celled creatures. And that was an experience. I can't quite describe it. I have not found the words to describe it. It felt like my mind was tingling. That was what it felt like. It felt like my nerve endings in my mind were tingling. So I finally find this absolutely beautiful blue, almost like lapis lazuli, blue and deep green, deeper than an emerald, deeper green than an emerald. And it was just the most beautiful planet. You think of Earth, blue and green, you think of the Earth, but it wasn't Earth. All of the rocks, everything were this deep, dark blue. And I decided that I was going to go over and I was going to sit on this planet and I was going to rest on this beautiful planet. It was just absolutely gorgeous to look at. Suddenly I hear laughter, and I hear people splashing and playing. And I realize that there are two creatures, or two humans, or two whatever they are, swimming in the stream below me. And so I watch them as they swim up to this moss-covered bank. They come to the moss-covered bank. I somehow know they are young lovers, like teenagers. Well, they're blue to begin with. They have scales all over their bodies, but not the type of scales that we have here on Earth. Their scales are soft. It would be like our skin is created in scales, but soft like our skin is. They had heads that were kind of like a Gila monster, but I guess you could learn to love one if you had to. But I felt the intensity of the love that these two beings had for each other. And not only did I feel the intensity of love they had for each other, I felt the intensity of love they had for their entire planet, their entire race, the entire universe. And so then I got really tired and I said, hey, enough of this. I want to get home. And I was on my way to Sirius because I knew that was where I was from. And I knew my father and my family was there, and I was headed just as fast as I can. I've had enough fun. I want to get home. I want to find out what's happened, while I've been gone, this sort of thing. And so I am flying just as fast as I can in the direction of Sirius, and suddenly there is a white wall in front of me. I literally have to put on the brakes to stop in time. And so I go this way, and then I go back this way, and then I'm sort of in the middle, and I'm trying to, figure out, do I go over it? Do I go under it? And then I hear a voice. Where are you going in such a hurry? And I realized that it wasn't a white wall, it was a white robe, kind of a heavy cloth robe. And I said, I'm going home. And the voice said, well, why in the world would you want to do that? You haven't even started your work upon the earth yet. I said, yes, I have. I'm leaving. I'm not going back. I am not going back. I'm going home. And then he turns me around and he shows me the planet. He says, without your piece of the puzzle, the entire plan could fail. For want of a nail, the horse was lost. For want of a horse, the battle was lost. For want of that battle, the nation was lost. This is what he got into me. I am one cog, I am one thread in the tapestry that all of us are weaving here. But without my thread, he let me know that the entire plan could collapse. But even as he's telling me that, I'm looking at this planet there that is covered in this brown, hazy fog. And what that was that I was seeing was the rage, the anger, the hate, the wars, the pain, the suffering, the inhumanity to man. And I said, hey, there is no way I am going back. I don't care. I don't care about those people. I am leaving, and there is no way you can force me back. And he said, oh, your poor husband, what a shock it's going to be to him when he wakes up in the morning and finds your dead body. And he points me right at my husband. And instantly I was back in bed. I was back in bed. I was wide awake. I had more energy than you could possibly imagine. I got up and wrote down a few things, and then I went back to bed. Well, the initial energy faded very rapidly. And I lay there in bed, remembering more and more and more of what they told me about this process. And I remembered how the breath went, the long, circular, connected breath. One that you don't stop when you inhale, you don't stop when you exhale. It is a long, slow, continuous breath. So I did the breath. I would lie in bed and I would do it for literally hours at a time. And let me tell you, it is really hard to focus on this breath, because what happens is garbage starts rising to the surface, and what you want to do is you want to go through the garbage. The moment you start going through the garbage, you stop breathing. The moment you stop breathing, you stop this process that is going on. And of course, the real reason this process works is we are literally puffing up our blood cells. I don't exactly know how it is, but I've had doctors tell me, yes, that's what breathing in this way would do. This is also the breath that is attached to Samasambhuti Yoga. Has anyone ever run across that term before? It's the ancient yoga of past lives, and I'm not sure that it is practiced. I'm not even sure that anybody knows how to do it anymore. But it was the same method that the ancient Hindus used to clear the garbage out of their past lives so that they could go to enlightenment. So anyway, I lie there in bed, another few months go by, and suddenly I'm well. I leap out of bed. I am so changed that all of my friends literally think I had died and a walk-in came in. For the first time in my life, I'm interested in politics. I join our Democratic club. I immediately become the treasurer, then the editor of their newspaper. I become the press coordinator. I've never been a press coordinator in my life, but I suddenly become the press coordinator for Central California for the Gary Hart 1984 presidential campaign. That was the one before Donna Rice. I became involved in local elections. We got a teacher-elected mayor. We got somebody that was not of, the crime syndicate that in my little town. We got him in place for the first time. In years, we hadn't had some party-controlled hack running our city. I get appointed to the Adjunct Planning Board. I am working on the Monterey Bay Aquarium. How many people have been to the Monterey Bay Aquarium? A number of people. Well, I am the one that planned the roads and the parking and all of that stuff down there. The only thing I didn't get was the train. They tore out the train tracks. And if you can imagine, here I am protesting with a bunch of other people laying on the train tracks. And this new mayor comes up and he says to the police, am I your boss? I think I am, but I haven't really checked that out yet. But I think I'm your boss. Well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to send my aide back and have him check to see if I'm your boss, and I'm just going to sit down here and wait until he gets back. And of course, what he was doing was telling the police, hey, get out of here, don't bother these people. What we were trying to do is we were trying to stop the machine that was going to tear up the tracks. We didn't stop it. And now they have a terrible congestion problem. If they had only followed what we wanted, they wouldn't have that problem. So at the same time that this is going on, I suddenly decide that I have to be ordained as a minister. And that's not right. I suddenly decide I had to be baptized. I had never been baptized. I was close to 35. I always thought I was going to die at 35, so I never bothered to be baptized, And so I practically did die. Now I decide I have to be baptized. Well, the man who baptized me said, you must come back, you must be ordained. And so the next week I drove down to Santa Barbara, and I was ordained into the Church of Antioch, which is the church that Peter started with the Holy Grail, is what they call it, the chalice that was used at the Last Supper. When Constantine decided that all of the bishops in the Holy Lands were going to come under the rule of the Romans, there were 5 churches that said, try to make us. And of course he went down and killed most of them. But the ones that escaped, and our church was one of the ones that escaped, we went to a mountain in Turkey and stayed there till the 16th century. So, I know that I am supposed to be studying enlightenment, because that's what I figure I have to reach before I can get off this planet. That's what I thought. So simultaneously, I am studying the Templar secret of enlightenment. My teacher had been a teacher of Manly Hall, and so because of his connection to Manly Hall, I was given like free access to the library of all of these ancient manuscripts. And since I don't read a lot of them, I was also given help from the librarian who happens to read all of them. And that was how the whole Templar process got started, because one day in that library, I ran across a reference to red and green, and that began a 14-year research project that just finally has, culminated in that image. So I've got 2 paths going on right now. I've got this very devoted research path trying to figure out what the Templar secret of enlightenment is, and at the same time, I am teaching the activated cellular memory process. Well, I teach it at home and in the local area for all of 1985, and then in '86, I decide that I can no longer be married to an alcoholic. And so I told my husband, John, that either you go into treatment or I leave you. Well, I gave at least a year, and every month I would tell him, I am serious about this. If you do not go into treatment, I am going to leave you. Well, he didn't go into treatment, so I left him. And in those, I was gone, I was away for about 2 years. And I was taking the ACM method nationwide. I was San Francisco, Los Angeles, Dallas, Houston, on to New York, places like that. And then finally he stops drinking, and so we go back together. And remember, there's nothing that happens without a reason. There are no accidents. Well, we're on our way to our engagement party, where we're going to announce to all of our friends that we're remarrying. And so guess what happens? I walk into our house, and in our bed, I find his body. Exactly what the instructor has said. How will you feel if your husband wakes up and finds your body? So in my insanity that usually takes place after you lose a loved one, I moved to New York City in the wintertime and discovered I had no insurance and immediately came down with pneumonia. But I healed myself. And as a result of this near-death experience, one of the people that came into my life was Senator Claiborne Pell, who had just sponsored a huge seminar on near-death experiences. And so he wanted to know all about mine. I told it to him. He said, I've never heard one like that before. He says, well, let's try this treatment. So he tried the treatment. Well, he tried a number of treatments. And it was shortly after that that I went back to see him. You see, one of my best friends was Barbara Honegger, who was the researcher researching the October Surprise. And many of you out there know that I married the October Surprise pilot, the CIA operative who was the man that flew George Bush to France to conclude the negotiations. And for those of you who don't know what the October Surprise is, because it's been a long time now, 1980, that was when there were 52 I almost said ostriches. There were 52 hostages held in Iran in the embassy, and the election was coming up in 1980, Reagan against Carter. And the percentage was so close that everybody knew if Carter freed the hostages, Carter would be president. And so what the Reagan campaign did is made a deal with Iran to delay the release of those hostages. So, in 1989, Barbara Honegger has absolute proof that the man that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, that Senator Pell is the head of, who is going to be confirmed as ambassador to South Korea, was a part of the October surprise. And so I carry all of these documents back to Washington, hand them over to him, and while we are having dinner that night, he lays into me in such a tirade, "You have taken advantage of a personal friendship. You have brought me information that I do not want." For some reason, it didn't faze me at all, and I'm yelling back at him, and everybody in the entire audience in this restaurant is glued to this fight we are having. And then at the end of the fight, he says, "I want you to be my administrative aide." Guess what for? There was a PSYOPs program that was funded on the black budget out of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. I cannot be sure, but I think it was the remote viewing. So anyway, I decide that I'm not going to do that. And I'm going to skip the vampire attack and almost hemorrhaging to death, and I'm going to go back to California. I don't have enough time to go into those. But anyway, I started bleeding to death while I was back there. I went to Edgar Casey's doctor's grandson, who put me back together well enough to get back to California, where I hemorrhaged again. I lost so much blood that when Pell called me to go to Pakistan with him, I couldn't even get out of bed. Well, when I finally did get out of bed, my mother said, "Well, it's time to take your niece back to Washington. Let's get in the car." So my first day out of bed, I am driving a car to Tacoma, Washington from California. You know, that's a nice thing to do after you've almost bled to death. In Medford, Oregon, that was where I was so tired I pulled off the road, and that was where I met Gunter Russbacher. From that point until I divorced him in 1998, and of course the reason I divorced him is because he forgot that he had ever been married to me and had gone off and married another woman, and absolutely would not believe that he had ever been married until he saw the marriage license, which had to be faxed to him. And then I guess he called Reno to prove to himself that he really did have to sign that divorce paper. So he finally signed it. I did get a divorce from him. 9 years, 11 months later, I am free. Needless to say, during those 9 years, I learned more about the people who control this planet than most people upon the planet. I also learned a couple of things. First of all, I would never have survived that if I hadn't known that I was on the path that God wanted me to be on. Also, I don't think I would have ever survived it if I hadn't used this magical breath for 4 years before and kept cleaning the garbage out of my system. And of course, during the most stressful times of that, I mean, when the warden is yelling at me, what am I doing? I am doing this circular ACM breath. When the Secret Service is interrogating me for trying to assassinate George Bush, during my 4-hour interrogation, what am I doing? The ACM breath whenever I have the chance. I know the breath works. It worked for me. The other thing I know is when you are on the path that God wants you to be on, no matter what it is, even if it's something that you absolutely don't want to be doing, you will have a clue that you are on the right path if money keeps coming your way in a magical way. Well, what had I been doing? I had been seeing clients and giving workshops. I can't see clients anymore. I certainly can't allow anybody into my house because I don't know if they're a CIA agent that is there to kill me. There were 7 attempts to kill me during that time. I have seen dead bodies dragged away from my house. I have seen people murdered in front of me. The people that were just about to kill me, I have seen the Navy SEALs who were my contingent. I have seen those people killed. A lot of you women can't relate to that, but I know the men who have been in battle can most definitely relate to that. I learned that if you're doing what God wants you to do, He will give you all of the money that you need to do everything you need to do and not 1 penny more. If I'd had 1 penny more, I probably would have moved to Hawaii and gotten all out of this. Therefore, I knew that this worked. But I had forgotten about the activated cellular memory process. It never occurred to me that I would ever be teaching that again. It was in February of this year I knew that everybody on this planet has to be affected by this activated cellular memory process. I didn't know anything about this window at that time. I tell you, I'm not an astrologer. I didn't know about the eclipse. I didn't know about this little short window that we've got where we can all dump our garbage. I have heard that it actually goes into November. What I know now is that the energy of this activated cellular memory process is like the 100th monkey syndrome. One person does it here, one person does it here, one person does it here, and then suddenly, whoosh, all of the garbage is gone. And what I feel more strongly than anything else that I have ever felt is that right now is the time that we are just about to flip this from what has been an absolutely hellhole of a planet into this beautiful, loving planet that we all know it can be. Now look, I walked in the other world. There were years that the people in my life, as I said, were admirals, Navy intelligence, CIA, FBI, Delta Force, Navy SEAL. These are the people I talked to on a daily basis. In other words, I didn't talk to anybody else. These are the only people I talked to, besides wardens, prosecutors, people like that. Then when we get over into Europe, who do we meet? We meet the Habsburgs, we meet kings and queens, we meet East Bloc spies and assassins. We meet foreign ministers, presidents. And while they are having conversations with my husband, Gunther, I am right there listening. When I say I know what is going on in the world, but I also have this spiritual knowing. And this spiritual knowing is telling me that the process that was given to me in this near-death experience is the process that is going to change the energy here on this planet. And we have a short window in which we're going to change it. Now you remember the astrologer that was here, and she said August 18th is the day for us to dump our garbage. August 17th is when I am giving the first large activated cellular memory workshop in 10 years. I came in early to Colorado and gave one in Fort Collins. There are 12 people here in the audience that have, or there are 12 people that attended that. Those 12 people will be at the one on Tuesday because I cannot do a large group without helpers. Would anybody who was at the Fort Collins one stand up, please, so that if anyone, Dennis was there, his wife Carol was there. Here's another Carol over here, she was at it. And Dan and Chris back there at that back table. So we've got 5 people here. If you want to talk to anybody, go talk to one of these 5 people about the process. Needless to say, it is a powerful process. I have to say, I very quickly put this tape together. And what is very interesting is the first recording that I made of it wouldn't work. It was so bad that I had to re-record it. I had to go back to the studio, I had to re-record it, which put me on a deadline, which meant that the only way that I could get the tapes finished in time to bring them here is if I went into my duplication and hand put every one of these together. Every one of these tapes that you will be getting has been touched by me at least 7 or 8 times. And I now know why that had to be. It is because the energy that I carry, that is the activated cellular memory process, will go into this tape. So that if you cannot come to one of the workshops, you can take the tape, you can use it on your own, you can bring friends, you can bring family into your house, you can all do it together. We must use this window that we have got, because if we can transform our negativity, we do 2 things. 1, we clean our own bodies, which means that we do get off this rock, you know? What do you think this cycle of reincarnation is? If you haven't cleaned your garbage, you come back. If you've cleaned your garbage, remember the Sama Sambuddha yoga? Then you go to enlightenment. Now, isn't it interesting that the one yoga that they don't teach anymore, that nobody's ever heard of, is this one that would actually take you to enlightenment? I have a feeling that the false gurus have been around a lot longer than just the 1970s. It's $20. It's got 2 tapes in it. It has what I call a chakra balancing, because the secret of this process is breath and balance, breath and balance. I have discovered a type of music. I've got one of the types of music on this tape, but I have another type that I use in the workshop that actually gets the process going faster. After you've used this one for a while, if you want, you can write down this name, Michael Stearns. Almost everything Michael Stearns creates is to release garbage at the cellular level, to get movement at the cellular level. I did not know that when I started using it. Using his music, I just knew his music worked. But whatever you do, if you're doing the process on your own, just use the music that is attached to this, because I created that music, not myself. I found a musician and told him what to do, and he was intuitive enough that he created the perfect music for balance and release. That workshop is 9 to 5, and on Monday, let's get back into my CIA consciousness again. On Monday, I am going to do a workshop in which we're going to discuss the death of JFK Jr. Was it an accident or was it assassination? We're also going to discuss mind control briefly, what happened down at Columbine and other places. And the other thing we're going to discuss is a new faction within the intelligence agencies. For a long time, there have been two factions. Suddenly, there is a third faction that is coming. And if this third faction is who I think they are, we're going to have a wonderful planet. And what you and I need to do, we need to do our part right now. And our part in this short window is to create this 100th monkey syndrome. I have been in the most evil hellholes on this planet. I have connections to them. Every one of you has connections to something. Your energy, you can follow your energy pathways, and you can clear the negativity from all of this planet. In other words, the 100th monkey syndrome, and we will have a beautiful planet. And we need to do it, and we need to do it now.
Thank you. Am I on? Somehow this microphone's always dead when I get up to speak. Thank you very much, Rayelen. We do appreciate all of your background, and she's got a lot more to talk about. Be back here in about 7 minutes, folks. We'll make up 3 or 4. Relax a little bit, walk around a little bit, because we're going to learn about a lot more about these programs that have been going on.
And I want that tape.